how to get into Google. So I think the easiest way to do it is to try to find your job here at Google.
First of all,
So
thank you so much, Alan, for your time today. Really appreciate it. Can you please tell me a little bit about yourself?
yeah, sure. My name is Allan. I'm Brazilian originally, and I came to the US in 2016 to UNC Flagler to pursue my MBA degree. And at that time, what I wanted was to break into tech, right? I used to work in the aviation industry, and what I wanted for my life was to switch to tech industry, more like in an operations or project management kind of role. And during my MBA, I had the chance to intern at Amazon at AWS, which I did in the summer of 2017. And after that, I came back to school for my second year, right? And I went back to Amazon to AWS as a full-time employee. I stayed there for like roughly 2 years, working in the supply chain space, new product introduction. About a year ago, I guess, like 10 months ago, I joined Google in a very similar position, still in the cloud space, new products and managing supply chain and materials. And that's what I've been doing since then.
And what was your process like getting into Google? Did you have a referral? Like, what was the application process look like? What was the interview process look like? Can you maybe share a bit more about your experience there?
Sure. So when I was looking for a transition for a new company, like getting out of Amazon, I was kind of researching the supply chain space, roles that were similar to mine, and I found this at Google, which was like almost the same thing that I did at AWS. And at that time, I had a friend, I still have a friend that is working at Google, right? So I was talking to him, and he offered me to put a referral for me. So he referred me, and then I started the process of recruiting, or not recruiting, but interviewing at Google. So basically, the first step is you submit your resume, right? And then usually the recruiter has a phone screening with you, just to make sure that you're a good fit for the role, that you understand, or to answer questions if you have any about that role. So once I did that, she scheduled a meeting or another phone screening with my manager, who was a hiring manager at the time. And that was like roughly 50-minute call, in which he had a chance to tell me more about the role. I had a chance to ask questions, and he also had some technical questions for me. So more like not a lot of behavioral questions at the time, but some questions regarding my motivation, what I wanted to do, like in Google, why I was looking for a transition, why that made sense for me at that time, and then switching to more technical roles, more technical questions, more role-related questions. And that was kind of step 2. And after that, once he approved me to the next step, at Google, we have a 4-interview process, or a process that has 4 interviews in the second step, right, in the final round. And these interviews, they cover 4 different things. So one is general cognitive ability, which is basically to see like how you think or how you approach problems. The other one is leadership and Googleness, basically like how you communicate, how you engage with other people, how you deal with ambiguity. Another one was like program management related, so just to assess my skills for program management and to make sure that if in the future I wanted to switch roles within Google, I would be still a fit for the role, for the program management role. And the other one was like a supply chain specific, like the role specific interview. So like these 4 interviews, I did them all on site on the same day, and then the interviewers, they put their feedback, and once we cleared that step, my manager asked me to do one more interview, because all the interviews that I did were in Sunnyvale, and I'm based in Atlanta. So they wanted me to talk to someone in Atlanta to make sure that I was a good fit for the office here as well. So I had this other interview, which was more like leadership, Googleness, and general cognitive ability kind of interview. So it was not like very role specific, but much more like just like how I think, how I engage with other people. And that was it. Like after I did all these interviews, they extended me an offer, and we negotiated it and I accepted it. One thing about the interview process at Google that is interesting for people to know, it takes a long time. So every step takes like a couple of weeks. The recruiters are really helpful, so they make sure that you understand in which step of the process you are, but it might take like a couple weeks for you to hear back with the next steps. but they're super responsive as well. So every time I wanted to know something from them, I was just like ping them, send an email, and then it comes like, this is the stage that you are. These are the things that we're waiting for now, and this is kind of the timeline that you have to wait for. So I'll engage with you like in a week or 2 weeks to let you know about your progress.
So for the whole process, how long did it really take from applying to maybe taking that offer?
Ah, man, that's a good question. So I think I put application maybe in November 2019, and I got an offer by the end of January 2020. So it was like, I'd say maybe 2 months and a half. Yeah, it was like roughly 2 months and a half to three
That's a long
months.
time.
How long it took? Yeah. And from like most of this time, like we had the holidays, right? So we had Thanksgiving, we had like a Christmas, we had a New Year's Eve. At Google, we also have time off for the Martin Luther King Day. So we did have a lot of time off during that time, and people taking vacations and etc. So that accounted for part of it. But what I've seen like internally now, it takes a long time. It might take more than 3 months,
Gotcha.
which was my process. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I said that I was kind of interested about your role. Can you tell me a little bit about the program management that you do? Because for me, it's kind of hard to understand like what would operations or program management will look like in cloud space. Because for me, when I think about operations, it's more like, oh, you move one thing to another kind of operation. So would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, like we have very different assignments for program management, for program managers at Google, at the cloud space, in the cloud space. I'm a program manager for the supply chain space, or at the supply chain space. So I'll be specific to what I do, but there are also roles that are just like program managers, like really project manager with a lot of complexity in teams to deal with, and a project that doesn't have like an end. It has a launch date, and then you have like to maintain it. So we do have this kind of roles. Mine is like more supply chain specific. So I came here because we have a partner that has their headquarters here, and we work very closely. And I have to manage or to make all the resources that they need to manufacture or the things that we need them to manufacture, right? So, and I'm trying to be very high level here because I don't want to get into anything that we have to cut out later. But basically, that's what I do. Like I make sure that they have the resources that they need. I align with the stakeholders, with the responsible people for example, placing POs, make sure that these POs have been placed and they are being delivered on time here, and then helping them to escalate things internally. So my team is entirely in Sunnyvale, and I'm way closer to the partner, to our supplier, our manufacturer people than they are. So I work closer with them to help like escalate things and make sure that we have the right things on the right place by when we need.
So can you tell me a little bit about your like day to day? I would assume that you have a lot of meetings and stuff.
A lot of meetings, yeah. So I'd say like roughly like 60% of my time is spent on meetings. From these meetings, like half of these meetings, they're really relevant to me, like are things that I am actively talking or listening to. The other half are more things that I might be asked a question, or they might talk about something that's really relevant to me. So this is how I spend my time in meetings. And the other 40% of my time, I'm usually making sure that things are where they should be and connecting with the right people and asking for the information that I need. And one thing that's very particular to my role, so this is a role that did not exist before I joined Google. So they wanted someone not only to do this role, but also to scope it out. Right? They had an idea. We need someone to do the materials management in Atlanta, but we have never had someone there. So we don't need what it actually takes for this person to succeed. So I also spend a lot of my time, let's say like from this 40% left, I'd say that most of it is spent developing tools and processes and engaging with stakeholders and showing them how they can leverage a materials manager, getting buy-in, right? Making sure that people know that there is a materials manager here, that they can count on me for stuff, and also identifying where are the gaps uh, in terms of processes and
Mm-hmm.
which tools we need to develop. So
Mm-hmm.
I do spend a lot of time developing with the analysts, right? A lot of tools and resources that they other people can use or I can use for myself to make sure that we can scale the business.
Um, were there any learning curves when you first joined?
Say it
And if
again.
they were there any learning curves when you first joined? And if yes, how did you overcome them? Were there any training materials or were there anyone who were helping you out?
So when I joined, the first thing my manager told me was like, at Google, people take a long time to ramp up. So we usually give people 6 months to ramp up. As we're during the pandemic, we're working from home, we won't have access to people, we won't be able to travel here. It's okay if it takes 9 months, like up to a year. That would be 100% understandable, right? One of the things that helped me to ramp up faster than that was that this role is very similar to what I did at
Mm-hmm.
AWS. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need to actually learn any new skills for the role, and I knew what were the things that I had to focus on. Like I knew exactly
Mm-hmm.
where the low hanging fruits were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew how to start it. But if I hadn't, I still like, even knowing what I had to do, I still leverage my team to learn like what are the processes that they're doing and what are the things that they think are important, what are the things that they have tried in the past and have failed, what
Mm-hmm.
are their pain points, these kind of things. And
Mm-hmm.
people at Google, at least in my organization, not only my team but like in the broader organization, people are very helpful. They're
Mm-hmm.
super nice. So they make sure like I had probably like 100 different one-on-ones with people that I may like work with one day, but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk to them, and they were super open, super helpful. They would give like advice on stuff. They'd say like, oh, this is like really a pain point. We're going to add like a lot of value. Leverage me if you need something, and if you have to talk at some time like in the future, please make sure you reconnect with me. So they were like really helpful in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of making me feel comfortable and included in the
Mm-hmm.
team. And also like all the silly questions that we have in the beginning, right? One problem of having exactly the experience that they needed me to have is that I came with some preconceived ideas of how things should work. And this was one of the first things that I heard, right? Like, yeah, we brought you because you know how to solve problems, but forget how you solve problems at Amazon because Google works differently. So you actually like have 6 months, 9 months to realize how Google works. That's the value that I can take out of this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of my steep learning curve, making sure that I understood why Google works the way it does,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very different from what I expected externally and
Mm-hmm.
from what I have experienced at Amazon, for example.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What would be one experience in the past that you unexpected to be helpful to ramp up that you actually did?
I think like I think it's a good question, hard to answer, but I think like one thing that I experienced a lot at UNC was this sense of collaboration, right? People were always open to help, and people were like, they would give their times to first years when I was a first year, right? And
Mm-hmm.
was a second year, I also was giving my time to other people. So it was kind of an informal mentorship coaching, you know, that I got used to, that I got used
Mm-hmm.
to. And then when I went to Amazon, that's not part of the culture there. So it was kind of forgotten in my like the back of my mind. But when I finally joined Google, I felt as I was like back to UNC. It's the same kind of culture, same kind of collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped me to feel included faster in the company, the culture, in the team, in the organization. So that's something that if I had to say, like after I left UNC, after I graduated and I joined Amazon, I thought like I would never feel like I felt during the MBA again, because I thought it was something specific to the MBA experience. But Then when I joined Google, I realized, no, like this is more like a culture thing than specific to an MBA experience.
Gotcha.
And this really helped me like to connect better with people and understand like what are the things that people expect me to do and what are the things that I can do and benefit them, like just for the sake of doing.
Makes sense. What do you like the most about your role, and what is probably your, least favorite part of your role?
So what I like the most is the fact that I'm actually helping to scope it out. So the role itself can be very technical in the sense that if everything was set up properly, I'll just be making sure that we have the raw material, like
Mm-hmm.
the material that we need on hand, and it'll be ready to give them to manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very technical, right? It needs a lot of influencing without authority.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like for everyone. It's not something that's just like repetitive work. It does need some thought, but at the end of the day, 75% of it is just making sure stuff is happening, like things are happening as they should. And when I got here, as I was scoping out the role, I do spend a lot of my time thinking on how this role will grow over time, how we can build a team out of it, how we can expand the scope that I'm doing for this specific partner to other partners that we have in other locations of the US and other locations of the world as well. So this is something that I think is pretty cool. And if I had to choose like one thing, I really like developing the tools that make my life easier. So right now, I spend like probably 15-20% of my time developing tools. I'm like a product manager for things that nobody thought we needed, or everybody know that we needed, but nobody had the time to put on it.
Yep.
I probably spend like 20% of my time doing those things, which I really like. What I don't like about my role, um, I mean, there isn't anything that I really don't like, but as I just mentioned, there is a technical part to it.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what I like the most,
Gotcha.
Whenever I have to be like chasing data points and making sure things are where they have to be, that's because we don't have automation to support, or the automation that I wanted to support it. It's just like a lot of manual work for not so much value added.
Sure. Can you tell me a little bit about the culture? I mean, you did touch upon it a little bit, but can you tell me a little bit briefly about the culture and the work-life balance, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So culture at Google, people are super friendly, super collaborative, super respectful. So if I had to generalize what I've seen in my team, my organization, and some other teams, for people like who are listening to this for the very first time and have no idea how Google works, respect each other is probably one of the most important and strongest things at Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
People want to make sure that every single member of a team is heard and they have their space and they are respected as professionals and as like human beings, like not only the professional space, but like as a person as well. So people here now during these crazy times, we are seeing like so much burnout and people getting like a lot of meetings and working from very early in the morning to very late. This is something that we're fighting very strongly against here at Google. So my organization has put like no meeting time in everybody's calendars and say like, no, like between 12 and 1, that's lunchtime. You either take a break, you either like have lunch on your desk doing your work, you do whatever you have to do, but don't schedule meetings unless they're like super important meetings at that time. So this is one thing. They're running a lot of surveys to make sure that they're capturing what people are thinking and how they're feeling. They have provided lots of resources for the employees to make sure that they were feeling well during this crazy time. So like health, mental health things, or just like short videos to help us out, like how to be more productive, how to face like home challenges during these times, and etc.
Sure.
So this is the respect each other part that I think like is key to Google's culture. And yeah, anything else that I can say could come from that.
Gotcha. Okay. So my last question is always advice for those who want to join Google or who wants to break into program management or operations or supply chain?
Okay, so three-step question, three-step answer, right? So to break into program management requires a set of more like soft skills, because the hard skills are not hard. Like if you go to YouTube and you like spend maybe 5 hours researching and learning, it's just like making sure you can communicate properly, you understand how a program works, and like which are the phases and how to engage with stakeholders and how to do like an agile or like a waterfall thing. It's not that hard, but you want to make sure that you can connect with people and you can influence without authority. So if you that are listening to us now or watching us right now want to break into program management, make sure that you can develop these soft skills. A good the program manager is as good as his soft skills to influence without authority, and to make sure that he can keep stuff on track in the schedule and under the budget, right? For my role specifically for supply chain does require you to think more on the big picture, uh, but also be able to narrow down to what you have to do today. So in the big picture, you need to make sure that the end customer has the things that they need to have, like in any kind of supply chain, right? How do you translate? How do you prioritize these to what you have to do today? So make sure that you have the right things, the right people, that you escalate properly, that you get the right priority with your suppliers, right? So it does require hard skills and specific skills. So if you want to become a supply chain manager or anything in the supply chain realm, what I would suggest you is to take some time, study, maybe like a 6 month training course or something like that, or even like an MBA, right? But if you're coming from an MBA, you probably should just take the lessons or the classes related to supply chain, because it's an entire world. It's so broad, that you need to know like the big picture. And last, and probably like most interesting or most expected, how to get into Google. So I think the easiest way to do it is to try to find your job here at Google. So if you're currently doing product management for, I don't know, for transportation, just try to find a product management role for transportation at Google, because this is like my experience from like what I've seen as well, and what I feel is that Google wants to find someone that has the hard skills and is a good fit, and the rest this person will learn internally. So they don't actually want to teach people how to do the job. They'd rather take someone that's already ready, and we just have to go and learn how to work here. So this is one thing that I would give as advice. The second advice, if you can, if you have anyone that you know, like even remotely at Google, ask them for a referral. If you don't know anyone, we have 100,000 employees. Just make sure you reach out to someone. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
Reach out to someone like at LinkedIn. I don't know, because whoever is referring you, they can, in a phone call, they can provide you a lot of good information, right? But also, there is a referral bonus. So it's not for free, right? It's not something that people are doing for free. So make sure you can leverage that. That will increase your chances to get on the top of the pile. That I have referred several people, all of them heard back from the recruiting team. So you do not end up in the black hole of like applications. So this is another thing. And the final thing is like, after you found a role that's very similar to what you do or to your skill set, after you got a referral or you applied and got invited by the interview or the recruiter to do an interview, make sure you go to YouTube, you research, and you prep appropriately, because it's not hard, it's just intense. So the better you are prepared, the more chances you have.
awesome. No, I can't agree more about reaching out to folks at Google where there's more than 100,000 employees, because that phone call can give you more information than that whole job description. So
Yep.
can't agree more on that. Well, thank you so much, Alan, for today. I think you have provided awesome insights and experience that you've been working at Google, and really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity.